Welcome to Avasant's From AI to Generative AI, Balancing Risks, Challenges, and Transformative Potential. This is the first in a series of AI-focused digital forums hosted by Avasant Digital Fellows. We look forward to engaging with you via the chat feature. Do send us your questions for the panel. I'm your host today, or your MC today, Rob Devers, a principal here at Avasant. Right now, I'd like to welcome our Avasant managing partner, Anupam Gopal, for some opening remarks. Anupam?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Avasant Distinguished Fellows Leadership Series. This is going to be a series of really thought-provoking discussions on topics that are really of top interest today to the C-level executives. And obviously, with generative AI being the talk of the town, this is going to be a big part of the focus. So Avasant Distinguished Fellows is a great program of CXOs, practitioners who bring together the industry expertise along with their domain knowledge to share the insights, learnings, lessons, tips with our clients as well as our whole ecosystem. And our goal here is really to cover topics and talk about the practical use of AI in the business, within the enterprise, along with what are the risks, challenges, and so on. Avasant has been publishing a lot of research in this area, and we look forward to you all taking advantage of that. So again, it's not really a big surprise that generative AI has taken the world by storm, and its potential is truly limitless, but it doesn't come without risks. And also there's a lot of prerequisites that are required in terms of having the right data governance, the right data models, and other aspects within the technology ecosystem that will make for a good, successful AI strategy. So in today's session, we're going to cover a lot of these issues. We're going to talk about what are the big challenges that can be solved by generative AI and how it's affecting everybody, whether it's in their personal life by using co-pilots or within your business sphere in terms of how you can use the power of generative AI to create new products, new tools, drive more innovation, drive more optimization. So I'll hand it back to you, Rob. Take it forward.
Thank you so much, Anupam. Now I'd like to move on to Chandrika Dutt, an Avasant research leader, who's going to give some interesting insights from Avasant research on AI. Chandrika?
Thanks, Rob. Hello, everyone. And I guess, everybody is familiar with generative AI. It's one of the most hyped technologies in the current AI landscape. And, rightly so because of the tremendous efficiency gains it brings to the table. But, as they say, great power, with great power, there is great responsibility. So the rapid advancements of generative AI, it has really heightened societal risks and dilemmas, which includes, racial or social biases, a lot of misinformation, concerns around, ethics and transparency, and not to mention, data privacy threats. So the way we see, ethics, fairness, and explainability have been long-standing issues in AI. And enterprises usually, they've got a good handle at it. It is typically being managed through a responsible AI framework. But the new risks which are posed by generative AI around data protection, copyright, and cybersecurity, they are very critical. And they definitely require immediate attention. That's why you would see, a lot of bills coming into the picture around data protection and privacy. A lot of enterprises building governance frameworks internally before they even start, experimenting with generative AI. Moving on to the next slide. Now, to help enterprises navigate the generative AI landscape, and also to help the industry ecosystem better understand the dynamic landscape of generative AI, Avasant has released this report that examines recent developments that have been shaped by the introduction of ChatGPT. It outlines the essential strategies for businesses, for service providers to monetize new opportunities that are coming along the way. It delves into the tangible benefits offered by generative AI, highlighting its transformative impact on outsourcing agreements, which includes innovative pricing models, productivity enhancements in IT and BPO services. And we are tracking this space very closely, and we will publish, updates every quarter. So please look forward to this space. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks so much, Chandrika. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Wally Yosafat. And Wally, over the years, have held quite a few roles of CIO, CEO, CDIO, outside director. He's currently an advisor, an Avasant Technical Fellow, along with being an interim CIO for Capri Holdings. So my pleasure to introduce Wally. Wally?
Thank you, Rob. And it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be with this distinguished panel that I will introduce in a moment. As Anupam opened up and talked about, we are in a time of explosive growth and AI spread. And there's a lot of, when we think about it, terms thrown about that people can think about in different ways. And I wanted to kick off before we get to the introduction of the panelists by sharing a few thoughts around definitions, which will kind of set the stage for where we are and where we go. I don't know if we can go to that next slide of the definition piece. There we go. So when we think about AI, machine learning, and I want to start off with who I credit or stole this from, right? One of our panelists, Julia Bardmesser, provided me some great inputs here that I just want to set the foundation and stage, and it will actually form the basis for one of our questions that we'll begin with. When you think about AI, you think about if we can go back to the next, the previous slide there on definitions. There you go. Thank you. Think of it in three ways, right? Artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, right? And this AI, this umbrella term, right, of AI for technology, and it's solving many, many problems, right, autonomously. You see these definitional terms, natural language processing, large language models, etc. So when you think about AI, right, we're going to build from this basis of definitions of really these three circles. Machine learning, the different models, processes, and supporting technologies, and then the deep learning circle, right, in terms of machine learning at the largest scale, right? So as we go through and I introduce the panelists and we throw out questions, I'd like you to keep these three in mind, and I'm going to be asking our panelists to talk about the different definitions. So let's jump to an introduction of our panelists, and I would like them to introduce themselves. Jim, if we can start with you and you hand off to Julia, and then to Elena, that'd be fantastic. So first up here, Jim Rinaldi, and then I'll come back with the beginning of our discussion session. Jim?
Thank you, Wally. I appreciate it, and welcome, everyone. I'm Jim Rinaldi. I'm a distinguished fellow at Avasant, former CIO. My latest was Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where I was CIO for over 14 years. And I come at looking at these technologies much like you would as a CIO. And I look forward to today's conversation, and it's a very exciting time, as already been discussed, and look forward to the conversation. Julia?
Thank you, Jim. And I'm Avasant Distinguished Fellow. I don't think I can say new anymore because it's been 6 months. So I think just distinguished fellow. I come at this topic from having been, I'm a recovering chief data officer. I've been in leading data and technology organizations in the financial institutions for many, many years, too many to count. And I come to this topic from data technology analytics, and now we have AI and generative AI, and how do we bring value to the companies? So that's my view. How do you use all of these capabilities that we now have and that are developing to bring more and more value? And Elena, over to you.
Thank you so much, Julia. So my name is Elena Likhashkina, and I'm currently serving as a board advisor and technical advisor for many tech startups, including the Global Studios and Clover Pop. And I'm the former chief digital and chief data officer 4 times for really well-known companies, which are Fortune 200 companies. And I'm really coming from the topic of AI from commercialization side, because majority of my experience I have been spending with the commercial functions. So I did work across enterprises, but my passion is definitely for commercial functions, because this is where you can see the difference on consumer side, and this is where you can see the difference on a company P&L, right? So I'm really would love to see the difference on company P&L coming from the new technologies.
Elena, Julia, Jim, thank you. Right, it's a great pleasure to be with you guys today, and to be with a large group of participants online. And so I look forward to an engaging discussion. I want to kick off this discussion by turning to the 3 of you, right, for your views. You know, with those definitions that we showed, that Julia, you know, you really provided the great inputs for starting us off on those definitions. What I'd love for each of you to comment on, I would like your take on definitions, explaining AI versus Gen AI, and if you can, briefly use or cite an example, right? And pick one of the definitional areas that we talked about in terms of AI, ML, DL, you know, and expand upon that. And Julie, I thought we'd start with you, because you put this together. So it probably didn't do it justice in terms of providing more of the context. If you could do that, and then Jim will ask you to build from there, and Elena, your thoughts as well. But Julia, give us a couple minutes of your thoughts on expansion of that with an example.
Yeah, thank you. So machine learning has been with us. I think it's a different slide, guys. I don't think we had this yet.
Right.
Right. Previous, the circular slide. So machine learning or artificial intelligence been with us for a while. So we've been data science teams, predictive analytics teams, but created this whole conversation and hype really around generative AI is making it available as a consumer end application. So AI has been in the background of everything we've been using for a really long time. You can go back to Netflix trying to match and provide you recommendation. That was AI. Amazon has been doing it forever. Even a much smaller version of somewhat generative AI, you know, when you try to type in your emails and it helps you and it finishes off your sentences, sometimes better than what you were planning to say, especially in my case, and sometimes completely not what you were going to say. That was all AI, but it was hidden from the consumers. Now it's kind of in front and everybody can go and see the magic. So if I were to talk about the major difference between non-generative AI and generative AI, so non-generative is really good and it's techniques of machine learning and deep learning. So machine learning and deep learning is data science techniques that are applied to multiple areas. So non-generative AI is really a classification problem. So you show it a picture and it tells you whether it's a cat or a dog. And you train it on data. You don't try to, machine learning is a technique that trains the model to tell cat or dog based on the data you provide, as opposed to trying to say, here is the characteristic, programming it the way I have programmed it back when I was a programmer. So, and generative AI, you ask it, can you get me a picture of a cat? And it gets you a picture of a cat. So that's kind of the major. So it's between classifying and recognizing to actually creating the document, the image, motion, and so on. So that's the major difference in my mind. And Jim, I'm gonna pass it on to you if.
Yeah, I will agree with a lot of that. I think it is AI's been around for well over 50 years. We just didn't have the computational capabilities we have today, nor the storage capabilities. So it certainly has gotten popular thanks to Gen AI, which is sort of analogous to when the internet first came up, when it was all text-based, and Mosaic came out with a browser that made it usable to the public. And that's what, ChatGPT has done. And all of a sudden now, with that kind of exposure, it allowed greater use of applications. I know in my past, especially at JPL, where we used AI, and we did quite a bit in machine learning to look at scientific documents, to find and discover things that we didn't know about or we forgot. We used to look at proposals. We also looked at, in a multimodal way, we would look at video images. As we're landing a spacecraft on Mars, the technology was developed to look at immediately at what it was landing, where it was headed, and those photos were then used to land autonomously in the right spot. So complicated AI, autonomous cars is another example of AI, and especially in a multimodal way. But then Gen AI, besides all the wonderful things that has been spoken about, has come along to generate new content and to generate new ways of doing things, including coding, including anything from developing documents. And really the benefit to date that comes out of it is efficiency, giving answers versus search that gives you a lot of places to go look. So from my point of view, this has started a revolution in terms of how people think and about systems, about business processes, about outcomes. And I'll talk more about that later. But I see that as the Gen AI is more of a subset of AI, and that AI has been one that is really the science behind it, and the algorithms behind it have led us to where we are.
That's great, Jim. Elena, would love your takes and your builds. Julia and Jim set a pretty good table for you. So would love from your perspective, your take on these definitions and, an example of those definitions.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be honest, we probably spend too much time on technical definitions. We should be maybe spending more time in terms of understanding how the definitions are impacting the companies and people, right? So let me provide example, which and Jim and Julia said that the capabilities have been existing for ages, right? We didn't have a technology, we didn't have cloud before, we didn't have so much, right? So I'll go from in one topic, which is actually all of us can feel, right? So Julia gave a little bit example about movies, but personalization in general, right? So if I look back in 2004, I was working for the Wall Street Journal, and Wall Street Journal was the first newspaper, like digital newspaper, wallstreetjournal.com, to really start doing behavioral targeting. So we didn't have technology, we had nothing. So basically I was convincing the vendor, which I had at the time, saying, we don't need to build so much. We have so much data, we have all weblogs and everything. So let's try actually segment people. Let's try predict what type of behavioral people can express, right? And when this was done in 2004, we increased our price for advertising 4 times, right? So this was absolutely, again, we're sitting now almost like 20 years back, right? So, but then go into today. The question about engaging in omni-channel is still not addressed, right? So as a consumer, we can feel it. So that going to the store, going to separate mobile applications, right? It's definitely improved since 2024, but it's not addressed. So from my perspective, I think generative AI had actually capability to start thinking how to address this question, right? So this is how I would see the evolution from really something which we can all feel, because before generative AI, omni-channel is still, cannot be addressed because it's tied to certain ID, to certain device, right? If generative AI can more predict and create this device in AI, right? So then we can definitely resolve the omni-channel engagement question.
Beautiful. Thank you. Great builds from each of you, right? And citing from each other. So I want to get to a meaty question, right? And we had a question that came up in the chat that and it's a perfect help to the question I was going to ask. So many times we talk about a concept, a technology, etc. And the $1 million, $64 million question always is, okay, so what? That's great. What can we do? What have you done? How have you applied this, for real benefit, real value, revenue growth, cost savings, innovation, new ideas, new streams, etc. So from your experiences, each of you, and I'm going to start with Jim this time, head to Elena, and then finish with Julia on this one. From your experiences in leveraging and delivering AI, I would like your best example. As a CIO, many times, as opposed to having to invent the wheel, my job was to go find the best wheel and leverage it, reapply it, right? So if somebody did something great in a given company, I'd take it and leverage and reapply, or seek and steal, right? Would be my case. So my question is, considering, significant innovation, automation, revenue, profit growth, give me your best example of here's how I've seen AI applied and done, and the rest of us could say, wow, how can I apply that in what I do? Jim, again, we'll start with you, then we'll head to Elena. And
well, it was pretty meaty when I mentioned on landing a spacecraft on Mars, but I'll try to find something else a little more meaty as well. But in reality, automating in a way that took human element out of operations. Cloud was a big use case for us, where we could automate that more with AI, such that we knew what we were getting. We knew what the machines we were spinning up were exactly going to be, and we could take the labor and reduce that quite a bit. Now, if I had Gen AI and some of the tools today, we probably would have done it a little differently. And AI ops is a popular term, but I'm seeing where real use cases of that are in play, and that's going to be a huge change in how IT operates, and with the possibility, and this is what I'm seeing, Wally, is I'm seeing that business outcome now could be more easily tied to your operations of your IT. So if you're getting better sales in a region, why can't you replicate that in another region and attribute that to what? Well, better, faster recognition of customer trends, of marketing opportunities, and use cases. So, but one of the biggest things that I really enjoyed, quite frankly, with AI was just doing deeper learning of the data we had, and you're taking that approach, because if you can think about a scientific organization, there's quite a bit of data, whether it's engineering or whether it's science data itself, the results of having in machine learning in particular, was a big asset to us to speed up the process, to give answers faster, in particular with engineering data, so that if you're new and you're all of a sudden looking at how to build something, technology or parts of a spacecraft, you have that data available. We even had equipment that we could test on the space station as well. When you start, what we left out of all this discussion is the precursors to a lot of this was, AR, all those features that we like to play with. Well, those things were enabled with a form of AI, and so anything autonomous, has that kind of capability, and that was a big deal to us for moving equipment on another planet or a spacecraft around where you couldn't have human control. And so those were things that come to mind. But I have to be honest with you, I'll be more, the things that are coming, thanks to this revolution now, is what keeps the excitement going, because we just touched the surface, and this is a new beginning. And so I look forward to talking more about that as well.
Great. And Jim, by the way, before I turn it to Elena, right? I could think of no better example than what you gave around a spaceship and sending it into space and doing that. I'm nowhere near that good, right? So I don't think I could take that, leverage it, and reapply it. But the things you gave me, right, are things I can take away and do, and I'll leave putting people in space in a better way to experts like you.
If I could just add, in reality, Wally, humans can't get past the moon without artificial intelligence and robotics to support their, when you start going long distances to Mars or something like that, you can't do it without this technology.
Great points. Elena, that's a pretty big one to follow, but would love your best example, right? What have you seen?
I'm an Earth person, right? So if I take, it's great to fly the moon, right? But if we take what are problems we're having on the planet, right? So there are several of them. And I'll focus maybe on two, which is I'm quite familiar through the healthcare and through the consumer and food companies. Because 80% of people on Earth, and we are sitting here in the United States, we don't see it, but they don't have access to medicine, 80%, and they don't have access to food, right? So what I think actually AI can resolve is ability to make the food more accessible, to medicine more affordable, and actually start reaching people, right? And we already see a lot of examples happening. So we can also see sustainable packaging happening, right? So this is all happening because AI is available right now, right? So I'll give you some example from the food industry, which I was personally involved, and you take it as simple as it is, right? So when a food company are creating formula or recipe, they call it recipe, right? Creating a recipe, then it's much easier to create a recipe and even predict the taste or create the taste which people gonna like using AI, right? So before, this was done on quite of manual way, right? So even from the storage of data processing, this was done in quite a manual way, right? But now we can see that companies are already creating the taste, right? And one of the area which companies are focusing to create a taste is related to how to make the food taste great, but also don't be heavy fat, heavy sugar, right? So because, as soon as you start removing all of this, the taste goes down, and consumers don't like to buy this food, right? So, but AI can actually predict all of this, right? So this is from food industry. And again, tons of examples, tons of technologies now developed, including even ability to grow the real meat just from the fractions of the meat, right? So you don't need to have an entire chicken factory. You can actually grow the meat, and it's going to be exactly the same meat, right? And it's going to be less harmful environment, right? And on healthcare, again, endless. We already see examples of X-rays, and we see that interpretation of AI in many cases it's much better than doctors. So this can actually cut the cost of healthcare and make it accessible, right? Because again, in the United States, we maybe don't know that women doing mammogram and it's not a problem, but in countries where we have a lot of people like India or China, actually there is no access to everybody to do a simple services as like this one, right? So I totally see that some really big world problems are going to be solved for people, and there are already great examples in this direction.
That's super. Wonderful. So Julia, I mean, you got that's a tough act to follow. I'm sure you'll deliver it.
Well, you know what? I'm not even gonna try to compete with that. Between trying to land people on moon and solving world hunger and access to medicine problems, I'm just gonna go very, very practical. And things companies can do now, which are nowhere close, but depending on what the company does, it can get them to at least solving the problems of that Elena mentioned of humanity faster and better. So one of the best use cases especially for generative AI right now is productivity enhancements, especially for the technology, both like for lawyers, for anybody, for call centers, for anybody who needs to go through enormous amount of information. So one of the problems, for example, that we faced quite a bit in the last company I worked for is call center. So if you call somebody, right, and the person picks up, and especially in financial services company, call center representatives has to go through a lot of information from the records of that specific person to the what is the contract, what was specified, what are the specifics for this specific, for whatever plan this person engaged with. And that took a lot of time. And as many of us know, call centers are a huge cost because it's real people spending time on the phone. And one of the big metrics is if you reduce the time on the call from average from 5 minutes to 4 minutes, for some companies you save billions. So what Gen AI can do is and we spent a lot of time figuring out, okay, how do we put it easy on the page and how do we make it available and what do we use? And now it's actually fairly easy. You just type in, here is the name of the person, give me those details and you get it all back. Now, it's not like technology is in place. It's not easy to do because you do need to have an information and their privacy, like there are lots of consideration there, right? You don't want all of a sudden social security popping up in that chat, but it will speed up the amount of time call center, as an example, will spend on the call with the customers, and it's much better customer experience. You're not, how many of us know, I'm going to put you on hold while I research this information, and there is a music playing in your ear, and most of the time it's not the music you actually want to listen to. But you're kind of sitting there waiting and hoping the phone is the call is not gonna drop and you'll actually get to the answer. But so now it's a much better customer experience and it's also much cheaper for the company. So that's productivity enhancements out of processing large volumes of information is one of the best current uses of generative AI.
Wally, if I could add to that, I
Sure.
appreciate it. Julia made me think of in my world, I get to visit with a lot of CIOs and see a lot of implementations going on, and the adoption has been anywhere from changing business processes because you can add intelligence in the process that otherwise required much more manual input, much like what Julia was describing, but also the fact of getting value out of your own data. And so I think the big issue today is going to be how do you take your data and build your own large language model or models and get better insights and better information out of it than you did, say, with data analytics and things of that nature. And that's a real use case that is exploding, and people are seeing great benefit in that. So those just came to mind. But also, I just want to comment on Lena's. The healthcare is going to be, in my mind, huge impact, and not only for the problems that she's talking about, but the fact that anytime you get telemetry data, whether it's human telemetry data, spacecraft telemetry data, or anything else, that data then could be acted upon. And this is where AI really plays a huge role in preventing and maybe detecting, as in healthcare, or in many cases, providing that smart assistant to the doctor who can't always stay current. And that's a very hot topic to someone like me, and one where I think the opportunity is going to grow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually like your data reference, because this is what I said multiple times. People call me for this. I'm just saying, like, eat your own bread. I mean, data people start from using AI to actually harmonize your data, to make your data better. And again, and people usually shocked when I'm saying, you know what, you don't need traditional master data management approach, use machine learning approach. And people are like, really? I can do it? Yes, you can do it already, like, for many years, right? But now you can do it even better, right? So even make the general data better, it's already AI can help.
These are fantastic examples, right? And I hope we answered in large part one of the questions that was put in the chat. These are things that people can take away, and if we get to it in our last question, there'll be some other things. I know other gems and jewels that you all will leave us with, but these are fantastic. We can take these and do something with them today. Jim, you'll appreciate this because we had some of this discussion on in a recent roundtable. But I'm going to start with Elena on this one, and then go to Julia and Jim. You'll wrap it up with based upon our conversation and your own context. Is a question that I get and hear, and again, Jim, you and I will appreciate this. Does your company have an AI strategy, and then development and execution methodologies and plans to put it in place? So not only the strategy, but then how do you implement the strategy and do that? Elena, we'll start with you. I'd like your take on what does that mean? Like when you get asked that, right? Does your company have an AI strategy? What is an AI strategy? A practical AI strategy, and then the plans to actually implement it, right? Taking it from a concept of a strategy to what does that mean? So when you get asked that question, how do you respond? How do you tell people what is the strategy, and then what are execution and development plans to make it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, first of all, AI strategy should not be any different from your business strategy. The same as your data strategy should not be different, right? So when people asking what is your AI strategy, my question, what is your business strategy? So then AI is going to be connected. But if we talk about how to construct the AI strategy, again, no different from the data strategy or technology strategy. I'm usually using the really simple framework, and the framework is tied to business. You need to ask your question, first of all, where we want to play. And where we want to play, it's a business question. So this is not where we want to play technical question. It's where we want to play. Okay, we want to improve our profitability. This is our play, right? Or we want to increase engagement with our customers and consumers. Okay, this is where we want to play, right? So then you ask your second question, how are we going to win, right? And how you're going to win is usually divided into two parts. So the part one, and this is people get excited because majority of people like to talk about technology. So how we're going to win is, what about the technology? What about the data? What about ability to build the models, right? So all of this technical construct come to place into how we want to win. But there is a second part of how we want to win is actually related to how we operationalize it, right? And how operationalize it is going to be about people, having the right people, having the right role, having the right skills. And when I'm talking the skill, a skill not to use the tool. This is what we keep teaching people all the time, the tool, right? But really the skill to work differently, to use AI and to benefit and supplement existing work, or maybe replacing some existing work, right? Plus, this second part is also including really tricky question is how are we going to scale it? What is operating model? Are we going to do it in federated way? Are we going to do it in centralized way? So what type of business functions we're going to prioritize, right? So basically just, repeating construct is simple, where we want to play and how we want to win, divided in two parts, technical part and more operational part. So this is what does it mean for me, AI strategy or data strategy.
That's fantastic. It takes the theoretical of the strategy and puts it into a different realm. Julia?
So Elena just took my part. That's why I was laughing when you were asking the question and went to Elena first. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have anything to say. So, well, I'll find something. So I completely agree with Elena. That first phrase, there is no AI strategy, there is no data strategy, there is a business strategy. Data, digital transformation, AI, it's the tools that you use to achieve your business strategy. So once you figure out, well, as Elena said, where you want to play and how you're going to win from the business side. So if you want to more deeply engage with your customers, how you're going to do it, not just using AI and data, but before you get to AI and data, more deeper engagement with your customers. Why? Do you want to have better retention? Do you want to have better recommendations to other customers? So exactly how is that going to play for growth of your business? And then you figure out your capability strategy. So chief data officers, or chief data analytics officers, or even CIO, they're not the owners of AI strategy. Or there is a business that owns the strategy, and what CIOs, CDOs, chief data analytics officers, whatever you want to call, they own capability strategy to enable whatever the business strategy is. So that's a very important distinction. I see a lot of it, and it used to be around digital transformation, and now it's around AI, and the conversations where how can CIO be change agent and get everybody on board with digital transformation? Analysts went, well, digital transformation is business. And then CIO enables it through capability strategy. So very similar to AI. So I think it's an incredibly important distinction. So, and we'll talk a little bit more, we'll get to the concerns, because also data governance now plays a huge role in enabling business and use of AI, but we'll get to it.
Super, Julia. Before we get to Jim, Anupam, I believe you have a comment or a question you'd like to weigh in with.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree that asking what's your AI strategy really is a question that probably needs to be asked in a different way. There is definitely a need for some sort of a standardization across an enterprise, because if you go back in history, when we had the whole RPA boom, you suddenly had different business units, divisions scrambling to implement RPA using different tool sets, using different vendors, different methodologies. Something similar is happening here. Although the field is a lot shorter, we have either the OpenAI stack, we have Google, and now recently we have Amazon Q. The point being that a lot of our clients are now looking at setting up what you could call an AI center of excellence, meaning you do want to standardize some of the models and platforms that you want to use so that there is not this proliferation of different incompatible assets and IT is left holding the baggage, right? So that, I think, is an essential element. But really, the AI strategy is more about what is your business strategy? How do you bring your data and analytics and all the other assets together to enable the business strategy? That was my
Thanks. That's great. So Jim, right, as usual, some really great thoughts that actually where we started was when you and I were on this discussion, and the question was, right, and we asked a colleague, do you have an AI strategy? So with these different thoughts in mind and your own, what's your take, right? How do you answer that question, or how do you ask that question differently?
Yeah, I think I'm going to differ a little bit with my colleagues, only because they're right, but it's an academic answer. The practical, what I hear and what people are interested in, especially boards are interested in, is an AI strategy. So now, if you come in and say, well, it's part of the business strategy, fantastic, show how that works. And I totally agree with that. But they want to know what role is AI going to play in that business strategy, and that's another way of turning it around. when I talk to CIOs today, there's two things they're asked to do, is reduce costs and improve the product of the company, product or service of the company. So contribute in a way to what the company sells, makes, or buys, whatever. And to do that with an AI strategy is meaning, how are you going to apply AI to this? How are you going to, a data-driven approach, and people don't, they understand it, but they don't really understand the process behind it. And so I think and you certainly don't have the time to explain all that to C-level executives who really want to sum it up. And so, to be honest, I think if you're in the entertainment industry, and I've talked to many in that industry, I live in the LA area, so it's kind of easy to do. Their concerns and their implementation was, how do we generate content? And we do it in a way that removes the risks that are associated with that. And, quite frankly, just finished a strike where that was a hot topic about, are you going to replace writers? Are you going to replace actors? Are you going to? And so those, I can tell you from my own experience talking to a good friend of mine, the board really wanted to know how that was going to work. And their first reaction, I heard this several times yesterday at an event, do you have a chief AI artificial intelligence officer? And, as a CIO, I cringe because it's just one more person to compete with, quite frankly, for money. On the other hand, it shows that they want the focus and the attention is this set of technology, much like the internet did with, I was at Marriott. We automated reservations. That took a lot of people out of that process. The same, it changed a lot of things, and it created billions of dollars of revenue. The same thing with AI is the potential, and that's what I think people are seeing. Of course, it needs to be part of the business strategy, but you have to demonstrate that you have a strategy within that helps you get there using these advanced technologies and tools.
Great diversity of opinions. Again, it gives us things to think about. And Jim, I often go through that same struggle of, here's a chief digital officer, here's a chief data officer, here's a chief technology officer. Yeah. Now there's a chief AI officer, et cetera. Okay, who's playing in whose worlds, but also to what benefit for the company of doing it. I had another question teed up, but just in the interest of time, right, I want to skip to a lightning round question, right, that we might even cover pieces or elements of the question I was going to ask. I was going to ask about risk, but we have a whole new session, and Rob will talk about a future session where we'll talk about risks and rewards of AI. But admitting to the three of you and all the people watching and the participants out there that it's impossible to sum up everything about AI in a 1-minute response, right? So that's a challenge out there right now that I'll give you as I ask my question. It's impossible to sum everything up, but I'd like you to leave us with one key learning, one piece of guidance. It could be a risk. It could be, this is what I learned in applying AI. This is a challenge I faced, guidance in terms of skills, technology, hiring, whatever. Give us in 60 seconds. And Julie, we're going to go back to you. Then we're going to go to Jim. Then we're going to go to Elena. Julia, in 60 seconds, what's one learning, one piece of advice or guidance you can give our audience today about dealing with AI?
So one of things that I'm realizing, that what I spoke about in terms of productivity enhancements and using generative AI for productivity enhancement, that's going to become table stakes for the company. So everybody does it, and everybody would establish benefits. To differentiate, you actually have to do it based on your own data. That's why differentiation will come in. And for majority of companies, of mature companies, they're still struggling with the data management, data governance discipline. And for generative AI to have high quality, correct outcomes that, bias and responsible AI, data governance and data management disciplines become even more important. So not only making data usable, but also making sure that your outcome of your generative AI models are what you're looking for and are good in all the meanings of good. So that's basically my guidance. Yes, concentrate on immediate productivity improvements, but keep working on your data, making it usable and governable, and do data governance for that, not just for the regulators and for the check marks.
Great answer. Jim, same challenge to you, right? 60 seconds. What do you leave the audience with on guidance?
Well, my guidance is quite simply start, experiment, prototype, get familiar with it before you listen to the antibodies that come out, the antibodies that will say, here's all the reasons not to do it. I find the more antibodies, the more reasons to go do it, because they just don't know enough. And those become blockers to change. And so, and Wally, with CIOs, we go through this all the time where it's not the technology, it's getting people to accept change. And this is the same thing I'm seeing with whether it's Gen AI or other AI, the fact that if you don't start, if you don't know something more about it, you're going to be spending too much time defending what you don't know about. And so I don't know how you do that. So the best way is get started. Even if you prototype, even as you're developing your strategy, know more about what you can do, and also benchmark with others. CIOs know, like you said, we know how to borrow from others. Absolutely, there's no glory in being only original thought here. Could share and benefit from that, but get started.
That's great. So Elena, right, you get the last word here on the piece of advice, right? The guidance, the learning. 60 seconds. Give us your best here.
I'll give you your best, and hopefully my best is gonna make people to think a little bit, right? So I want to be so provocative, because what I heard before, and talking about the center of excellence, right? And we had so many: digital center of excellence, data center of excellence, governance center of excellence. Nothing didn't work, right? So why we think that centralization is gonna work for AI? So I think everything comes into people question. So by creating center of excellence, we're trying to give people fish. We want to teach people how to fish. So turn this back around. So I strongly do not believe that building center of excellence is immediate emergency and priority. So, and maybe starting in more distributed operations is a better way, because it's going to help people to really get the skill and really understand how they're going to be efficient in your environment. Yes, and later on, yes, you can get into the centralization and excellence and technology, but this is all technicalities and commodities, right? So, but really giving people ability to fish themselves and learn how to do it. So I think this is what we need to do.
That's great. And if you think about it, right, back to Jim's point, right, of start, right? Even before you get to that center of excellence and build, take Jim's point, start, which I think is yours, right? And let people go do, and then we can always get to center of excellence later, right? So a nice tie, right, together of what you all are saying. I want to bring start to wrap us up, and I'll turn to Rob in a second here. As we look at future sessions here, this was a foundational session. It's one of 4 that's coming on AI from our leadership group. And again, stealing from Julia, right? So I'm eating my own words here, right? Of seeking to reapply. I didn't come up with this. I'm going to credit Julia for this. When we think about data governance, right? And Julia talked about data and how important that is. Where there's great power, there's great responsibility. We heard that before, right? So many different aspects that feed to AI, of correctness of data quality, data observability, explaining and understanding what's there, removing the bias. We could spend a whole session about AI and bias and learnings and machine learning, et cetera. And then, data about the data, metadata, definitions, what's it mean? And again, back to Julia's point of, what's a piece of advice? How do you get your data right? That's something you can do, right? That's going to be if I can steal your words, Julia, that's going to be your competitive advantage for what's there. Before I want to turn to Rob, I want to both thank our panelists, but also take a couple of takeaways that I took away from there, right? Some unbelievable examples, from putting people out into space to making your teams more productive, solving the world's food crisis, right? Getting health care and medicine to the masses. What is a strategy? What is an AI strategy, right? There's a business strategy. There's a data strategy. It's not just the technology. It's tying it to the business. It's tying it to what you want to do and break down. And I love, Elena, how you explained it and broke it out. And then, great learnings for all of us, right? Get your data right. Start, right? Don't start with a COE, but build the skills and capabilities. These are things that I can take away and go apply tomorrow in my interim role and in future roles and in guiding and working with AI without having to know the technologies of AI, right? How can I guide my company to be able to? So hopefully that leaves you all with some excellent pieces. I'm going to stop talking, get off the stage. It's been a great honor and privilege to be with Jim and Julia and Elena. I look forward to working more with you all together and continuing to learn from you, to steal, leverage, and reapply. And with that, I want to turn it back to Rob, and Rob will talk about what's to come.
Thanks so much, Wally. Thank you. Thank all our panelists. It was an awesome panel today, and thank everybody for joining. I hope we all gained some valuable insights. I know I did. And as Wally said, this was a general foundational overview. What we're going to do next is we're going to have a 3-part series, and then it's going to culminate at Avasant's flagship summit called Empowering Beyond. And as you can see on the screen there, you've got session 2 on February 6th, session 3, March 7th, session 4, April 11th, and then Empower Beyond, where we'll have a big summit at the Lowe's Hollywood Hotel, which is part of a bigger Avasant event, which I highly recommend you all join. It's here. It's also in the comments. But let's just talk a little bit about these next pieces of the series. We gave an overview here. We're going to do something really interesting here now on the detailed level. We're going to mix both a deeper dive in a functional area combined with a deeper dive in a couple industries. So tentatively right now for the second or session 2, we're going to be looking at risk and compliance and governance and how that works with AI and weave that into healthcare and education. We're then going to look at on session 3, communications and ethics, and how does that weave into CPG and manufacturing. Finally, we're going to look at metrics and how does that weave in, say, to the HR department and banks. Once again, we'll touch on more than these areas, but each one is going to be a bit of a deeper dive. And then finally, once again, we'll bring it all together at Empowering Beyond. I hope all of you can join, and thank you so much. Once again, I found this really valuable. I hope you all did too, and look forward to seeing you all in the future sessions.